Welcome to Quantum Realm. Here is the paradox no one is willing to say out loud. The moment you stop needing it, it arrives. Not because the universe rewards detachment as a strategy, not because you tricked your subconscious with the right affirmation, but because wanting, that tight, contracted, desperate wanting, is itself the field distortion that pushes reality away. You have been taught to pursue, to visualize harder, to want more deliberately. And yet here you are, watching this transmission, because somewhere beneath the effort a part of you already knows something about the equation is wrong. This is not a motivation video. This is a recalibration. And if you're watching this right now, if something pulled you here without your full understanding of why, then the field is already responding. Stay present. This is the experiment. Before we go further, pause for just a moment. If you can feel even a faint resonance with what was just said, that quiet recognition beneath the surface, anchor the signal, like this video, to lock the frequency. Drop a comment below and write, "I release and receive." Let that be your first act of quantum coherence today, and subscribe. Because what unfolds next is built layer by layer, and you will want to be present for every transmission. Let us define the problem precisely, because precision is where freedom begins. You were given a program. It runs in the background of almost every human being on this planet. The program says, if you want something, pursue it. Apply force. Increase effort. If it isn't working, want it harder. This is the 3D identity program. And it is not your fault that it was installed, but it is your responsibility to see it for what it is. A conditioned loop that keeps the observer locked inside the experience, unable to access the field that generates experience. Here is where quantum mechanics and ancient wisdom converge. The ancient Egyptian texts attributed to Thoth, the Hermetic corpus, state that all reality emerges from mind, not from effort, from awareness itself. The Hermetic principle of correspondence, as within, so without. Not as a metaphor, as a mechanical description of how consciousness interacts with the field of potential. Modern quantum physics confirms something stranger and more precise than most people are willing to sit with. The act of observation collapses the wave function. An unmeasured particle exists in superposition, all possibilities simultaneously. The moment a conscious observer focuses attention, one possibility crystallizes into form. This is not poetry. This is physics, and the implications for your life, for what you are trying to build, attract, and become, are more radical than you have been told. The wanting is the measurement that collapses the wrong wave. We are going to change that. Let us go deeper into the mechanics. In quantum field theory, every particle you can observe is simply a localized excitation of an underlying field. The field itself is invisible. It is pure potential, vibrating, coherent, responsive. What appears as solid matter is frequency crystallized into density. Now consider this. You are not separate from that field. Your body generates an electromagnetic field that extends beyond your skin, your heart. According to research from the HeartMath Institute, produces the largest electromagnetic field of any organ in the body, measurable several feet away. Your thoughts and emotional states change the coherence patterns of that field in real time. This means your internal state is not a private experience. It is a broadcast. And the universe, the quantum field, does not respond to your words. It does not respond to your vision boards. It responds to your frequency signature. The coherent electromagnetic pattern you are radiating right now, in this moment, is what the field is reading. Now here is where it becomes precise. When you want something desperately, what is the emotional frequency embedded in that wanting? Lack, absence, not yetness. You are broadcasting the signal of the thing not being here, and the field, which is non-local, non-linear, and infinitely intelligent, mirrors that signal back to you with perfect accuracy. You receive more of the thing not being here. This is not punishment. It is coherence. The field is extraordinarily precise. The Arcturian Council, those higher dimensional intelligences whose transmissions have been received across thousands of years of human contact, describe this as frequency correspondence. What you are, you attract, not what you want. not what you need, who you are. Sophia, the embodiment of divine wisdom in Gnostic and pre-Christian traditions, encoded the same truth. The masculine principle of pursuit must be balanced by the feminine principle of receptivity. The Logos reaches outward. Sophia receives. Reality is born from their union. When you are only in pursuit, when you are only wanting, grasping, pushing, you have severed the receptive half of the equation, and the circuit is broken. Yet this is where most people misunderstand the teaching. They hear stop wanting and they interpret it as become passive, give up, detach coldly. That is not what this transmission is activating in you. The state we are moving toward is not indifference. It is coherent openness. There is a profound difference between the closed tension of desperate wanting and the expansive stillness of a consciousness that knows, not hopes, not wishes, but knows, that the field is already moving. One is a fist. The other is an open hand. Fear is not your enemy. Doubt is not your enemy. These states are simply signals that your attention has collapsed, that you have identified so completely with the 3D program that the observer inside you has gone offline. They are not problems to solve. They are indicators to read. Now that you understand the mechanics, the frequency broadcast, the field correspondence, the broken circuit of desperate wanting, we can move into what to actually do about it. This is where the activation begins. The first thing to understand about entering the observer state is that you cannot force your way into it. That sentence is worth sitting with. You cannot force your way into the state of non-forcing. Every technique, every practice, every tool offered in this section is not a method of control. It is a method of release. You are not building a new structure. You are dissolving a layer of static from the transmitter, your own consciousness, so that the signal you were always meant to broadcast can finally come through clearly. Let us begin. Step 1. Locate the wanting in your body. Do not start in your mind. The mind will argue. The mind will rationalize. The mind is the operating system of the 3D program. And if you try to think your way out of wanting, you will simply generate more elaborate forms of wanting. Instead, right now, as you watch this, bring your awareness into your body. Place your hand on your chest if you need a physical anchor. And ask, where is the wanting living? For most people, it is in the chest. A tightness, a reaching forward, a pressure. For some, it is in the stomach. For others, a subtle constriction in the throat, as though the words not yet have lodged themselves in the tissues. Wherever you find it, do not try to dissolve it. Simply observe it. This is the first quantum act. You are becoming the observer of the experience rather than the experiencer trapped inside it. And in that shift, however subtle, the wave function begins to change. Breathe into that location, not to fix it, to illuminate it with attention. Step 2. Reframe the breath as a field interface. Your breath is not merely an oxygenation mechanism. It is the primary rhythmic system by which your coherence is regulated. When the breath is shallow and rapid, the breath of someone who is anxious, who is wanting desperately, who is scanning the horizon for results, the heart rhythm becomes incoherent. The electromagnetic field becomes erratic. The field reads this as static. Slow the breath. Extend the exhale slightly longer than the inhale. 4 counts in, 6 counts out. This pattern activates the parasympathetic nervous system, shifts the heart into coherence, and, critically, begins to change the frequency signature you are broadcasting. Do this for 2 minutes and your field is already different. You are not the same transmitter you were 2 minutes ago. Step 3. Move from wanting to knowing. This is the most advanced and most misunderstood step. It is also the one that most people skip because it feels inaccessible, almost arrogant to claim. But stay with this. The field does not respond to hoping. It does not respond to wishing. Both of these states carry within them the embedded signal of uncertainty, the frequency of maybe. And maybe is a collapsed probability, not an expanded one. The state that opens the field is knowing. Not the brittle knowing of the ego that clenches and insists. The quiet, luminous knowing of the observer who has released attachment to timeline and simply holds the frequency of the desired reality as already done. In Hermetic tradition, this is called the mental equivalent. In quantum physics, it resembles the act of treating a future state as already collapsed. A retrocausal influence on the wave function that researchers like Dr. Dean Radin have explored in consciousness studies. In practical terms, instead of visualizing the outcome and wanting it to arrive, you inhabit the frequency of already having it, not as fantasy, as a field state. What does the version of you who has already received this feel like in the body? What is the quality of their breath, their posture, their gaze? Move into that state, even for 30 seconds, and your broadcast has shifted. Step 4. Recognize the signs of activation. You will know the observer state is stabilizing when certain experiences begin to occur. These are not metaphors. They are measurable shifts in field coherence, sudden clarity. A thought or solution appearing without effort, as though it was always waiting just outside the noise. Synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that are too precise to dismiss. A name you were just thinking appears in a conversation. An answer arrives through a stranger. A door opens that was closed yesterday. Elevated intuition. A quiet certainty about next steps that bypasses the need for external validation. These are not coincidences. They are field confirmations. The quantum field is showing you, in real time, that your transmitter is now coherent enough for the information to come through. When these signs appear, do not grasp them. Do not become excited in the contracted, wanting way. Simply acknowledge them. Thank you. I see the field moving. And return to the open, receptive state. Step 5. Address the return of the old pattern. It will return. The 3D identity program is deeply wired. It has been running since childhood. When external circumstances do not change as quickly as the ego expects, the old pattern will reassert itself. See? Nothing is working. Start pushing again. This is the critical moment. Do not fight it. Fighting generates a new form of resistance, which is itself another frequency distortion. Instead, name it with precision. This is the 3D program activating. This is conditioned response, not truth. And then, without drama, without self-judgment, return to step 1. Locate the wanting in the body. Breathe. Shift to knowing. The path back is always the same path. Each time you walk it, the neural groove deepens. The observer state becomes more accessible, and the gap between the internal shift and the external manifestation begins to compress. Now that the foundational practices are clear, we can move into what mastery of this state actually looks like in daily life, and what becomes possible when you stop treating reality as something you are pursuing and begin understanding it as something you are generating. Mastery does not look like perfection. Mastery looks like someone who has practiced the return so many times that the gap between disturbance and coherence has become almost imperceptible. The Arcturian Council transmissions describe this as walking in 2 worlds simultaneously, maintaining full engagement with physical 3D reality while holding an unbroken thread of connection to the quantum field of potential. Not escaping the world, not bypassing experience, but moving through it with a different center of gravity. This is what integration means. And it begins the moment you stop treating the observer state as a practice session and start treating it as your baseline. Here is what changes when that shift happens. The dissolution of timeline anxiety. One of the greatest sources of the wanting frequency is timeline attachment. The belief that if something does not arrive by a certain point, it is either lost or was never real. The 3D program is deeply linear. It measures, it compares. It calculates how long it has been and uses that data as evidence against the field. But the quantum field is not linear. Time, at the level of wave function and field coherence, is not a river flowing in one direction. It is a probability landscape. What you are attempting to manifest does not exist at some fixed point in the future, waiting for you to reach it. It exists as a probability state that becomes more or less accessible based on the coherence of your current field. When you are in the observer state, genuinely, stably, you are not closing the distance between yourself and the desired reality. You are changing your frequency address so that the timeline in which that reality has already crystallized becomes the one you are moving through. This is what Starseed transmissions have described across multiple centuries and cultures. A timeline shift is not a dramatic event. It is a subtle but profound reorientation of the observer's position within the field. You do not wait for a better future. You become the version of yourself for whom that future is the present. The mechanics of conscious co-creation. Here is the framework that makes this operational. Every reality you experience is the crystallization of a frequency you held long enough at high enough coherence for the field to organize around it. This is not a belief system. This is the literal description of how consciousness and matter interact at the quantum level. Which means you are already creating. Constantly. Without interruption. The question is never, can I manifest? The question is always, what am I actually broadcasting? When you are in the desperate wanting state, you are broadcasting lack. The field crystallizes lack. When you are in the coherent knowing state, the open hand state, the receptive observer, you are broadcasting the frequency of the reality you desire is already present, and the field begins to organize around that. This is not wishful thinking. This is frequency correspondence, operating with the same mechanical precision as gravity. The Sophia principle re-emerges here in its full meaning. The creative force of the universe does not force. It invites. It receives. The moment you align your internal state with what you wish to experience, not chasing it but being it, you become the harmonic anchor that reality organizes itself around. Harmonic anchoring in the field grid. You are not the only node in this network. The planetary field. What some traditions call the grid, and what physics describes as the quantum entanglement network of consciousness, is a web of interconnected observers, each broadcasting their frequency signature into the collective. When you stabilize in coherent knowing, you do not only shift your personal timeline. You become what the Arcturian Council describes as a harmonic anchor in the field. Your coherence ripples outward. Other nodes in proximity. Other human beings, relationships, circumstances begin to resonate with your stabilized frequency. This is why the most transformational people in history were not the loudest. They were the most coherent. Gandhi did not overpower the British Empire with force. His field coherence created a resonance that became impossible to contain. Nelson Mandela did not overcome 27 years of imprisonment with rage. He emerged more coherent than when he entered, and the field reorganized around that. Mastery is silence that vibrates. The moment you stop performing manifestation. There is a specific threshold in this work that almost no teaching addresses directly. Most people approach manifestation as a performance. They do their practices, they say their affirmations, they hold their visualizations. And underneath all of it, they are watching themselves do it, measuring whether they are doing it correctly, hoping that their effort will be enough to convince the field. This is the ego running a spiritual program, and the field sees through it instantly. The threshold, the actual tipping point, is the moment you stop performing and simply are. Not because you decided to let go, because there is no longer anything to hold on to. The wanting has dissolved not through suppression but through genuine understanding. You have recognized, in your body and your field, that the thing you were seeking was never outside you. It was always a frequency waiting to be inhabited. If you can remain present enough right now to feel the silence behind these words, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of fullness, you may already be touching that threshold. Let that land. Light code activation and the DNA conversation. At this level of coherence, something else begins to occur that science is only beginning to measure and ancient traditions encoded in symbolic language thousands of years ago. Your DNA, beyond its function as a genetic instruction manual, operates as a biophotonic antenna. Research by Fritz Albert Popp and others in the field of biophotonics has demonstrated that living cells emit coherent light. Photons that carry information in patterns that resemble communication more than noise. When your consciousness field reaches sufficient coherence, the light code activations described in Arcturian and Pleiadian transmissions begin to make physiological sense. The body's biophotonic system, responsive to the coherence of the electromagnetic field surrounding it, begins to shift its signaling patterns. This is what the ancients meant by the body of light, not a metaphor. A measurable phenomenon that becomes accessible when the observer state is stabilized and the frequency of desperate wanting is replaced by the frequency of coherent presence. Your DNA is not fixed destiny. It is a field-responsive instrument, and you are learning to play it. The silent mastery principle. The moment you stop seeking results, the results organize. Read that again without rushing past it. This is the culmination of everything transmitted in this session. Not a technique, not a strategy. A state of being in which the observer has dissolved the separation between itself and the field, in which there is no longer a self reaching for a reality out there, but simply a coherent field expressing itself through form. This is what the Hermetic Masters pointed toward, what Thoth encoded, what the Arcturian Council has been transmitting across dimensional barriers for millennia. You were never meant to pursue reality. You were always meant to generate it. Here is the activation summary. You came into this transmission carrying the frequency of wanting, of effort, of the reaching forward energy that the 3D program installed so deeply you forgot it was installed at all. And something has shifted, not because I told you to shift, because the observer in you recognized itself. The field is not waiting for you to get this right. It is already responding to the coherence you have begun to build. Right now, in this moment, by simply choosing to stay present long enough to hear this. You are not behind. You are not missing anything. You are exactly at the frequency threshold where reality begins to move. Now, here is the question I want you to sit with and answer below. From what part of the world are you watching this transmission? Leave your location in the comments, because the nodes in this field grid matter, and you are one of them.